Character is revealed when no one is watching. Character is not what a person claims to be. It is not the image they project, the words they carefully choose, or the persona they display in public. Character is revealed in silence, in private, in moments where there is no applause, no reward, no consequence, and no one to impress. Most people misunderstand this. They believe character is proven through declarations of values, through moral language, through the right opinions spoken at the right time. But words are cheap, and performances are easy. Anyone can appear principled when there is something to gain. True character begins where performance ends. It exists in the choices a person makes when their behavior carries no social cost, when there is no audience to judge them, when doing the right thing offers no recognition, and doing the wrong thing offers convenience. This is where reality separates itself from illusion. Because human beings are remarkably skilled at pretending, we live in a world built on appearances. Social structures reward likability, confidence, and surface-level virtue. From an early age, people learn what to say, how to behave, and which traits are praised, not necessarily which traits are real. So they adapt. They learn to curate themselves. They learn how to sound ethical without being ethical, how to appear strong without being disciplined, how to signal intelligence without understanding, how to display kindness without possessing empathy. This is not accidental. It is survival behavior in a social world. But what cannot be sustained forever is inconsistency. Sooner or later, character reveals itself, not in dramatic moments, but in patterns, in repetition, in the quiet, boring, unobserved details of daily life. Pay attention to those moments. Watch what someone does when there is nothing to gain. Watch how they behave when no one is watching closely, when there is no pressure to impress, when their actions are free from supervision. That is where truth lives. A person with integrity behaves consistently across contexts. Their private self does not contradict their public image. Their values are not situational. They do not require witnesses to act decently. But a person without character needs an audience. They become moral when observed and careless when unseen. They speak about principles, but abandon them when inconvenient. They appear disciplined publicly and indulgent privately. They perform virtue while quietly making exceptions for themselves. This gap, between who someone is when observed and who they are when alone, is the most reliable indicator of character. And it matters more than people realize. Because your life will be shaped not by what people say to you, but by what they do when they believe you are not paying attention. Most betrayals do not happen suddenly. They happen gradually. They happen when someone feels unseen, unaccountable, or justified. The friend who speaks loyalty but gossips when you're not present. The partner who preaches honesty but bends the truth when it benefits them. The colleague who praises teamwork publicly but undermines others privately. These are not isolated behaviors. They are fragments of a deeper pattern. And the tragedy is that people ignore these signals. They excuse them. They minimize them. They rationalize them away. He didn't mean it. It was just a moment. That's not who they really are. But it is exactly who they are. Character is not defined by intention. It is defined by behavior. What someone repeatedly does in small moments tells you more than what they claim in large ones. This is why people so often feel blindsided by betrayal. They say, "I never saw it coming." But the truth is, the signs were there. They were simply ignored. Human beings have a powerful ability to deceive themselves, especially when emotional attachment is involved. We want to believe the best about those we care about. We want to trust. We want consistency between what we feel and what we observe. So when reality conflicts with expectation, we often choose comfort over clarity. But clarity demands attention. It requires you to notice what happens when rules loosen, when supervision fades, when the structure holding behavior together is removed. Watch how someone behaves when they are given freedom. Freedom does not corrupt character, it exposes it. A person with discipline does not fall apart when no one is watching. They do not need external control to behave responsibly. They operate by internal standards. A person without discipline requires structure to function. Remove the structure, and chaos emerges. This applies to everything. How someone manages their time, how they treat commitments, how they handle temptation, how they speak about others in private, how they behave when they believe consequences are unlikely. These moments are not meaningless. They are diagnostic. And the reason they matter is simple. Most of life happens without witnesses. Your relationships, your decisions, your habits, your long-term outcomes. They are built in private moments. A person who cuts corners when unobserved will eventually cut corners when it matters. A person who lies casually in small situations will lie strategically in large ones. A person who disrespects boundaries when no one intervenes will escalate when they believe they can get away with it. This is not pessimism. It is realism. Patterns do not change without effort and self-awareness. And most people do not change unless forced by consequence. This is why discernment is not optional. You must train yourself to observe quietly, not suspiciously, not cynically, but attentively. Notice who someone is when they think nothing is at stake. Notice how they behave when they believe their actions are insignificant. Because those are the moments that reveal what they will do when the stakes are high. There is another uncomfortable truth here, one most people avoid. You are subject to the same test. Your character is also revealed when no one is watching. When you choose discipline or indulgence. When you choose honesty or convenience. When you choose responsibility or excuse. It is easy to demand integrity from others. It is harder to practice it privately. But this internal consistency between who you are alone and who you present publicly is the foundation of self-respect. Without it, confidence becomes fragile, identity becomes performative, and strength becomes dependent on validation. A person who knows they act with integrity, even in isolation, does not need approval. They are grounded. They are stable. They are difficult to manipulate. This is why strong character often appears quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It does not advertise morality. It simply acts, consistently. And over time, reality aligns around it. In contrast, performative character eventually collapses under its own weight. Because maintaining a false self requires constant effort, constant monitoring, constant image management, and eventually, fatigue sets in. That is when the truth emerges. So if you want to understand someone, truly understand them. Stop listening so closely to what they say. Start watching what they do when they believe nothing is at risk. That is where character lives. That is where truth waits patiently to be noticed. If you want to understand a person quickly, do not observe how they treat those they admire. Do not watch how they behave around people who can benefit them. Look instead at how they treat those who have nothing to offer. This is where masks fail. It is easy to be polite when there is something to gain. Easy to be respectful when reputation is on the line. Easy to appear kind when approval, opportunity, or status is at stake. But remove incentive and truth surfaces. The way a person treats those who hold no power over them reveals their moral framework with brutal clarity. Because in those moments, there is no strategy required, no image to protect, no advantage to secure. Only character remains. Watch closely how someone interacts with people they perceive as insignificant. Service workers, subordinates, strangers, the elderly, the socially invisible. These interactions are rarely rehearsed. They are reflexive, and reflexes are honest. A person who views others primarily through the lens of utility. What can this person do for me? Will expose themselves here. They may not shout. They may not insult. They may not act overtly cruel. Instead, it leaks out subtly. A dismissive tone, a lack of eye contact, impatience, entitlement, the assumption that someone else's time, labor, or dignity is expendable. These behaviors are not random. They reflect an internal hierarchy, one where worth is assigned based on status, usefulness, or dominance. This worldview is dangerous because anyone who believes some people are beneath them will eventually place you there too. Once your value diminishes, many people misunderstand this principle because they confuse charm with kindness. Charm is social intelligence. Kindness is moral character. Charm knows how to impress upward. Kindness treats downward with dignity. A charming person may flatter authority while exploiting vulnerability. A kind person remains consistent regardless of position. And consistency is the key. Pay attention to how someone behaves when inconvenience occurs. Mistakes happen. Orders get mixed up. Delays occur. Systems fail. These moments act as pressure tests. A person with strong character understands that imperfection is part of reality. They respond with patience. They correct without humiliation. They assert boundaries without cruelty. But a person with weak character reacts differently. They escalate. They belittle. They assert dominance. Why? Because inconvenience threatens their sense of superiority. To them, Being inconvenienced by someone they view as lower status feels like an insult. And so they retaliate, not to resolve the issue, but to reassert hierarchy. This is not strength. It is insecurity disguised as authority. A person who must humiliate others to feel powerful is revealing something important. They do not possess internal power. True strength does not require an audience. It does not require submission from others. It does not need to prove itself through cruelty. Weakness does, and weakness is loud. Another mistake people make is assuming that cruelty toward unimportant people is compartmentalized, that it somehow does not reflect the person's overall character. This is false. Character does not switch on and off depending on context. It expresses itself wherever it believes it can. The way someone treats a waiter today is the way they will treat a partner tomorrow. Once familiarity removes the need to impress, the way someone dismisses a junior colleague is the way they will dismiss you when your usefulness declines. This is not cynicism. It is pattern recognition. Many relationships begin with warmth and attentiveness. In the early stages, people perform their best selves. They are patient. They listen. They show consideration. But as time passes, something shifts. The performance relaxes. The effort declines. And the real hierarchy emerges. Respect becomes conditional. Affection becomes transactional. Kindness becomes situational. This is when people say they changed. But they didn't. The conditions changed. What you are seeing is not transformation, it is revelation. This pattern is especially visible in workplace environments. Observe the manager who praises executives while humiliating subordinates. Observe the leader who demands loyalty but offers none. Observe the authority figure who enforces rules selectively, lenient toward those above them, harsh toward those below. This person does not respect people. They respect power. And anyone who respects power more than people will always abuse it when given the opportunity. True leadership operates differently. A leader with integrity does not adjust their humanity based on rank. They do not treat decency as a reward to be earned. They understand that authority is a responsibility, not a privilege. They correct without degrading. They lead without intimidation. They listen without insecurity. This consistency is rare and valuable. The same principle applies to friendships. A person who is kind to you but cruel to others is not kind. They are selective. And selective morality is not morality at all. It is strategy. Such people are not operating from values. They are operating from calculation. They treat others well only when it serves them. And the moment it stops serving them, the behavior disappears. This is why it is dangerous to judge people solely by how they treat you. Especially early on. You are not seeing their character. You are seeing their interest. Real character reveals itself over time and across contexts. Watch how someone speaks about people who cannot defend themselves. Watch how they talk about those who are absent. Watch how they behave when they believe there will be no consequences. These are not throwaway moments. They are windows. There is also a broader implication here, one that extends beyond individuals. Cultures and systems reflect this same principle. Societies that prioritize status over dignity produce individuals who behave accordingly. When worth is tied to position, wealth, or influence, exploitation becomes normalized. People begin to believe that power justifies behavior, that success excuses cruelty, that hierarchy absolves responsibility. These systems eventually collapse, not because they lack intelligence or ambition, but because they lack integrity. When human dignity is conditional, trust erodes. And without trust, no system, personal or institutional, can endure. It is important to clarify something here. This is not about perfection. Everyone has moments of impatience. Everyone experiences frustration. Everyone fails at times to live up to their ideals. What matters is pattern. A single lapse can be a mistake. A repeated behavior is a choice. If someone consistently dismisses, devalues, or dehumanizes those they see as unimportant, they are showing you who they are. And if you ignore this, if you rationalize it away, you will eventually experience it firsthand. Because character does not discriminate based on closeness. It only waits for opportunity. So learn to observe without attachment. Notice behavior without needing to explain it away. Trust patterns over promises. And remember this: the measure of a person is not how they treat those who can elevate them. It is how they treat those they believe cannot affect their life at all. That is where truth stands exposed. Language never lies. Words as windows to the mind. People believe they can hide who they are behind the right words. They believe language is a shield, something that can be shaped, polished, and controlled to create a desired impression. They are wrong. Language is not just communication. It is exposure. Every word a person chooses reveals how they think. Every sentence exposes priorities, insecurities, values, and intent. And most importantly, language reveals what a person is trying to protect. Listen carefully, not just to what someone says, but how they say it. Because the mind cannot speak without leaving fingerprints. A person's speech patterns are rarely accidental. They are habits formed over time, and habits are rooted in character. One of the clearest distinctions language reveals is the difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is quiet. It does not rush to dominate conversations. It does not need to prove itself. It is grounded in competence and experience. Arrogance, on the other hand, is loud and fragile. An arrogant person speaks in absolutes. They present opinions as facts. They dismiss nuance. They interrupt. They correct not to clarify, but to assert superiority. Why? Because arrogance is not strength. It is insecurity wearing armor. A person who truly understands something does not need to inflate their importance. They are comfortable with uncertainty. They can say, "I don't know." They can admit error without feeling diminished. An arrogant person cannot. Their identity is tied to being right. So disagreement feels like an attack. And when challenged, they do not engage, they react. Pay attention to how someone handles being questioned. Do they listen? Do they reflect? Do they respond with curiosity? Or do they become defensive, sarcastic, hostile? This reaction tells you everything. A person who responds to challenge with contempt is not defending truth. They are defending ego. And ego-driven minds are dangerous. Another revealing pattern lies in how people speak under pressure. When calm, most people can sound reasonable. They can choose their words carefully. They can perform patience. But pressure removes filters. Anger, frustration, embarrassment, and stress force the mind into instinctive response. And instinctive language is honest language. Watch what happens when someone is contradicted publicly, when they feel misunderstood, when they are told no. Do they remain composed? Or do insults appear? Mockery, belittling, personal attacks. These are not communication tools. They are weapons. A person who uses words to wound rather than to clarify is revealing a core truth. They do not seek understanding. They seek dominance. This kind of language is not strength. It is compensation. Strong minds do not need to degrade others to maintain position. Weak minds do. Language also reveals how a person sees the world. Listen for patterns of blame. People who consistently externalize responsibility, who speak as though life is happening to them rather than being shaped by them, are revealing a lack of accountability. Everything is someone else's fault. The system, their past, other people. This does not mean hardship is not real. It means character is revealed in response to hardship. A person of integrity acknowledges reality without surrendering responsibility. They describe problems without excusing themselves. A weak character hides behind explanations. Another subtle indicator lies in how people speak about others who are not present. Gossip is not harmless conversation. It is a moral signal. A person who casually shares private information, mocks others behind their back, or speaks with contempt about absent individuals is telling you something important. They lack boundaries, and people without boundaries will eventually violate yours. Many people assume gossip is a bonding tool, a way to create intimacy. But what it actually creates is distrust. Because if someone speaks freely about others to you, they will speak freely about you to others. This is not speculation. It is consistency. Language also reveals honesty, not just in content, but in structure. Truthful speech is simple. Deception is complex. Lies require maintenance. They require justification, exaggeration, omission, and revision. This is why deceptive language often sounds defensive, overly detailed, or emotionally charged. The speaker is not just conveying information. They are managing perception. A person of integrity does not need to convince you. Their words align naturally with reality. This alignment is rare. And when you encounter it, you feel it. There is no pressure, no confusion, no subtle manipulation, just clarity. Another important signal lies in promise-making. Pay attention to how freely someone commits verbally. Do they make big promises easily? Do they speak in grand declarations? Do they assure you repeatedly of their intentions? Or are they measured, careful, precise? A person who values their word does not give it lightly. They understand that speech is a form of commitment. A person who speaks carelessly treats words as tools, not bonds. And this difference matters because language creates expectation, and breaking expectation erodes trust. Over time, you will notice something else. A person with strong character speaks consistently across contexts. Their tone does not radically shift depending on who they are speaking to. They do not speak down to some and up to others. Their language reflects internal stability. A person without character adapts their speech opportunistically, flattering upward, dismissive downward, performative when observed, careless when unobserved. This inconsistency is not intelligence, it is fragmentation. And fragmentation always leaks. Words will eventually betray intent. Tone will reveal attitude. Patterns will expose values. This is why listening is a discipline, not passive listening, attentive listening, the kind that notices rhythm, emotion, reaction, because language is not just what is spoken. It is how a person positions themselves in relation to truth, power, and others. And once you learn to hear it, you cannot unhear it. Words become signals. Speech becomes data. And clarity replaces confusion. So if you want to understand who someone really is, listen closely. Not to the story they are telling, but to the way their mind moves through language. Because language never lies. It only reveals. Power does not corrupt. It exposes. Most people believe power changes people. That authority turns good individuals into monsters. That influence creates corruption where none existed before. This belief is comforting because it allows people to blame power instead of character. But it is wrong. Power does not corrupt. Power reveals. It acts as an amplifier, intensifying whatever already exists beneath the surface. Discipline becomes leadership. Integrity becomes responsibility. But insecurity becomes cruelty. And ego becomes tyranny. Give two people the same authority, and you will not get the same result. You will get clarity, because power removes restraint. It reduces consequences. It weakens accountability. And it creates asymmetry. One person can affect another without equal resistance. And in that imbalance, truth emerges. Look closely at how people behave when they gain even a small amount of control. A manager overseeing a team, a teacher in a classroom, a parent within a household, a popular figure within a social circle. These are not grand positions of dominance, yet they are sufficient to expose character. Some people, the moment they are placed above others, change their tone. They interrupt more. They listen less. They enforce rules selectively. They begin to enjoy compliance. Why? Because power gives insecure people what they lack internally: a sense of significance. They mistake obedience for respect, fear for loyalty, silence for agreement. And this illusion is intoxicating. A person who feels small inside will use power to feel large. They will assert dominance not because it is necessary, but because it reassures them. This is why weak people crave authority, not to serve, not to build, but to compensate. Strong people do not need control to feel valuable. They already possess internal order. So when they are given power, they use it carefully. They understand its weight. They see its consequences. They do not rush to assert dominance. They create structure. They establish clarity. They protect boundaries without humiliation. Power, in the hands of the disciplined, becomes stewardship. But power, in the hands of the insecure, becomes a weapon. Observe how someone treats those dependent on them. Do they listen? Do they protect? Do they correct with dignity? Or do they threaten, manipulate, exploit uncertainty? A person who enjoys making others feel small is not confident. They are exposed. They are revealing a deep fear, the fear that without power, they are nothing. This is why tyrannical behavior often escalates. Once someone uses power to define themselves, they become dependent on it. They need more control to maintain the same sense of identity. So they tighten rules. They punish dissent. They silence disagreement. Not because order is required, but because exposure is feared. Look at how someone reacts when their authority is questioned. A secure person explains. They clarify. They engage. An insecure person lashes out. They interpret questions as challenges, feedback as disrespect, disagreement as rebellion. Because to them, authority is not a role, it is armor. And when that armor cracks, Panic sets in. Another revealing moment comes when power is removed. How does someone behave when they lose status? When they are no longer in charge? When influence fades? Some people adapt with grace. They accept change. They remain grounded. Others unravel. They become bitter, vengeful, obsessive. They cling to relevance. They sabotage successors. They rewrite history to preserve ego. This reaction exposes a fundamental truth. For them, power was not a responsibility, it was identity. And when identity is built on authority, loss becomes annihilation. You will see this dynamic everywhere. In workplaces where former leaders undermine teams they no longer control. In relationships where one partner cannot tolerate equality. In families where authority is enforced through guilt rather than guidance. These are not isolated issues. They stem from the same root. Internal weakness masked by external control. True power looks different. It does not announce itself. It does not demand submission. It does not fear replacement. A person of character uses power to elevate others, to create competence, to build systems that function even in their absence. They are not threatened by capable people, they cultivate them. Because their worth is not tied to dominance. They understand that authority is temporary, but character is not. This is why real leaders step aside when their time is over. They do not cling. They do not sabotage. They do not manipulate legacy. They know who they are without the title. And that knowledge is strength. Power also reveals what a person fears. Those who hoard control fear irrelevance. Those who silence dissent fear exposure. Those who dominate fear equality. Fear always precedes abuse. And abuse always follows unchecked power. This is why judgment matters. Not moral judgment, observational judgment. You must learn to see how people behave when they can affect others without consequence. Because one day, they may have power over you. And when they do, they will not become someone new. They will become more of who they already are. Remember this. Power does not change character. It removes the need to hide it. And once you understand that, you stop being surprised by cruelty, manipulation, or collapse. You start seeing it coming. If you want to understand a person's true values, do not ask them what they believe in. Ask what they are willing to protect and what they are willing to sacrifice. Because values are not declared. They are defended. Every person, when faced with pressure, reveals a hierarchy. Some things are preserved at all costs. Others are negotiable. And that hierarchy tells you exactly who they are. Most people claim to value integrity, honesty, loyalty, and respect. But when these values collide with comfort, convenience, status, or ego, something gives way. Watch carefully to see what survives. A person who protects their image over truth does not value honesty. They value perception. A person who protects comfort over responsibility does not value growth. They value ease. A person who protects ego over relationships does not value connection. They value control. This is not condemnation. It is observation. Pressure reveals priorities because it forces choice. When everything is easy, values remain theoretical. But when something must be lost, character is exposed. Look at how someone behaves when the truth threatens their reputation. Do they tell it anyway, even if it costs them approval? Or do they distort, minimize, and deflect to preserve image? A person of character accepts short-term discomfort to maintain long-term integrity. A person without character chooses immediate protection at the expense of trust. This is why some people lie reflexively, not because they are malicious, but because they are afraid. They protect their self-image at all costs. And over time, this protection becomes habitual. Soon, they no longer know where truth ends and narrative begins. Another revealing moment occurs when loyalty becomes inconvenient. True loyalty is not tested when alignment is easy. It is tested when association carries risk, when supporting someone threatens status, when standing by someone invites criticism, when honesty costs access. Who stays? Who disappears? Who quietly distances themselves? These moments are not betrayals of circumstance. They are betrayals of value. A person who values connection will endure discomfort. A person who values status will retreat. Again, this is not about perfection. It is about pattern. One sacrifice reveals nothing. Repeated trade-offs reveal everything. Watch what someone protects during conflict. Do they protect resolution or dominance? Do they protect understanding or being right? Some people would rather win an argument than preserve a relationship. They would rather feel superior than feel connected. That choice tells you their priority. Another subtle indicator lies in how someone handles boundaries. Boundaries threaten control. A person who respects boundaries values autonomy, both theirs and yours. A person who violates boundaries values access and influence. Watch how someone reacts when told no. Do they adjust? Do they respect the limit? Or do they push, guilt, manipulate, and pressure? Someone who cannot tolerate boundaries is protecting entitlement. They believe their desires outrank your autonomy. That belief is not accidental. It is foundational. Notice also what people protect when resources are limited. Time, money, energy, attention. Scarcity reveals truth. Do they become generous or grasping? Transparent or deceptive? A person with internal security remains consistent under pressure. A person without it becomes defensive. This is why crises change relationships. Not because people become worse, but because protection instincts override performance. People stop pretending. They reveal what they truly care about. There is also a darker reality here. Some people protect their narrative at all costs, even if it means harming others. They justify behavior. They rewrite events. They shift blame, not to understand, but to remain innocent in their own mind. This self-protection is dangerous, because anyone who protects their innocence over accountability will repeat harm. They cannot learn from what they refuse to acknowledge. In contrast, a person of strong character protects truth, even when it exposes flaws. They do not confuse self-worth with being flawless. They understand that accountability strengthens identity. They can say, "I was wrong. I failed. I need to change." These words require courage, and courage reveals value. Another revealing indicator is how someone treats those who protect them. Do they exploit loyalty or honor it? A person who takes loyalty for granted sees people as resources. A person who values loyalty protects it carefully. They do not test it unnecessarily. They do not abuse it. They do not demand it through fear. They earn it. And earning requires consistency. Over time, you will notice something else. People protect what they fear losing. Someone who fears exposure protects image. Someone who fears irrelevance protects status. Someone who fears abandonment protects control. Fear creates protection strategies, and those strategies define behavior. This is why understanding fear is essential to understanding character. But do not confuse empathy with blindness. You can understand someone's fear without excusing its consequences. Values are not proven by intention, they are proven by defense. So watch what people guard, what they justify, what they refuse to relinquish. Because those things, more than any speech, define them. And if you pay attention, they will show you long before they ever tell you. The moment control slips, truth emerges. Most people can manage themselves when life is predictable, when routines hold, when outcomes are familiar, when control feels intact. But character is not revealed in comfort. It is revealed in disruption. The moment control slips, when plans collapse, expectations break, or authority is challenged, the mask begins to crack. Because control suppresses truth, and loss of control releases it. Watch carefully how someone reacts when things stop going their way, when they are frustrated, when they are contradicted, when they are rejected, when they fail. These moments bypass performance. They trigger instinct. And instinct is honest. A person with emotional maturity responds to loss of control with restraint. They pause. They regulate. They choose response over reaction, not because they feel less, but because they understand consequence. A person without emotional discipline reacts. They lash out. They blame. They escalate. They seek to restore control not through understanding, but through force. This is where truth surfaces. Anger, in itself, is not a flaw. It is a signal. But how someone expresses anger reveals character. Does it become clarity or cruelty? Some people use anger to assert boundaries. Others use it to assert dominance. The difference is intention. A boundary seeks resolution. Dominance seeks submission. And submission is always about insecurity. Notice how people behave when they feel embarrassed. Embarrassment threatens self-image. It exposes imperfection. A secure person can tolerate this discomfort. They acknowledge it. They learn. An insecure person cannot. They deflect. They mock. They humiliate others to re-establish superiority. This reaction is not strength. It is desperation. Control slipping also reveals honesty. When stories unravel, when contradictions surface, when reality challenges narrative, Some people adjust their story to align with truth. Others bend truth to preserve story. The latter reveals someone protecting identity rather than reality. That protection always comes at a cost. Another critical moment occurs during rejection. Rejection removes validation. It tests whether someone's behavior is genuine or transactional. Does respect remain when admiration disappears? Does kindness persist when attention fades? Or does resentment surface? A person who becomes hostile after rejection was never offering respect. They were negotiating. Control also slips during failure. Failure strips away illusion. It exposes limitation. Strong character responds with responsibility. Weak character responds with excuse. One learns. The other defends. Pay attention to language during failure. Listen for accountability or avoidance. I should have done better. Versus, that wasn't my fault. Patterns here matter. Failure is unavoidable. Avoidance is optional. Loss of control is also revealing in relationships. When one person gains emotional leverage, when dependence forms, when vulnerability increases, some people respond by becoming protective. Others become manipulative. They withdraw affection. They create insecurity. They use uncertainty as leverage. This behavior is not love. It is control disguised as connection. And it only appears when the balance shifts. Control slipping also reveals how people view others. When they can no longer manage perception, contempt leaks out. Tone sharpens. Patience disappears. Respect erodes. These are not temporary lapses. They are disclosures. Many people excuse this behavior as stress. But stress does not create cruelty. It uncovers it. A person who becomes cruel under pressure was simply restrained by circumstance. Remove restraint, and you see truth. This is why calmness is not the absence of emotion. It is the presence of discipline. A disciplined mind remains stable under fluctuation. An undisciplined mind seeks dominance when stability is threatened. This principle applies universally. In leadership, in intimacy, in conflict. Loss of control is inevitable. How someone responds to it is not. The strongest individuals are not those who avoid chaos. They are those who remain ethical within it. They do not need to win every moment. They do not need to dominate every interaction. They do not need to restore control at the expense of dignity. They understand something fundamental. Control is temporary. Character is permanent. Those who cling to control reveal fear. Those who adapt reveal strength. So observe carefully. Watch how someone behaves when they are uncomfortable, when they are challenged, when they are exposed. Because those moments do not lie. They show you exactly who you are dealing with. Before words have time to intervene. Patterns matter more than apologies. An apology can be spoken in seconds. A pattern takes time to reveal. And yet, people are often persuaded by words rather than behavior. Because words feel immediate. They soothe discomfort. They create the illusion of resolution. But character is not revealed in remorse. It is revealed in repetition. Anyone can apologize. Few people change. This is where discernment matters. A sincere apology is followed by adjustment. An insincere one is followed by repetition. And over time, patterns speak louder than any expression of regret. People who lack accountability often apologize fluently. They say the right things. They adopt the right tone. They display the right amount of self-awareness. But nothing shifts. The same behavior resurfaces. The same harm repeats. The same cycle continues. This is not misunderstanding. It is strategy. An apology becomes a reset button, not a turning point. They are not seeking transformation. They are seeking relief. Relief from consequences. Relief from discomfort. Relief from accountability. Watch what changes after an apology. Does effort increase? Do boundaries improve? Does behavior align with awareness? Or does time simply pass? Until the next incident? Patterns reveal intention. 1 mistake is human. 2 is coincidence. 3 is direction. This applies everywhere. In relationships where disrespect is followed by affection and then repeated. In workplaces where promises are made but systems remain unchanged. In friendships where boundaries are acknowledged and then violated again. Words may express insight. Patterns reveal commitment. Another revealing behavior is selective accountability. Some people apologize to maintain access, not to restore trust. They say sorry just enough to keep the relationship intact, but not enough to change how they behave within it. This is not remorse. It is negotiation. They are bargaining for continuation without transformation. True accountability is inconvenient. It requires restraint. It requires effort. It requires enduring discomfort without relief. That is why it is rare. Pay attention to how someone responds when patterns are named. Do they listen? Do they reflect? Do they ask how to improve? Or do they become defensive, dismissive, accusatory? Defensiveness is often disguised as explanation. Long justifications, contextual framing, blame shifting. These are not signs of misunderstanding. They are signs of resistance. A person who truly wants to change seeks clarity, not cover. Another key indicator is how people respond to boundaries after apologizing. A sincere apology respects limits. An insincere one resents them. If someone apologizes and then complains about your boundaries, they are not seeking repair. They are seeking control. Boundaries disrupt patterns, and those invested in patterns will resist disruption. Consistency is uncomfortable for those who rely on resets. They prefer cycles, because cycles preserve identity without demanding evolution. This is why some people repeatedly sabotage relationships, not because they want conflict, but because stability would require change. And change threatens identity. Patterns also reveal self-respect. People who respect themselves do not need repeated apologies. They correct behavior the first time. They do not normalize harm. They do not justify repetition. They understand that integrity is built through alignment, not intention. There is also a dangerous tendency to romanticize remorse. Tears, regret, emotional expression. But emotion without adjustment is manipulation. It creates sympathy without responsibility. And sympathy delays consequence. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. Forgiveness does not require continued exposure to harm. Understanding does not require tolerance of repetition. You can acknowledge remorse while still recognizing pattern. Because pattern is truth over time. Character is not who someone is when confronted. It is who they are when unobserved. It is what they do when there is no immediate consequence, when no apology is required. So stop asking how sorry someone seems. Start asking how consistent they are. Because patterns do not lie. They do not promise. They do not perform. They repeat. And repetition is character in motion. Discipline, responsibility, and the silent proof of integrity. Integrity is rarely loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It does not seek applause. It operates quietly, through discipline and responsibility, long before anyone is watching. Most people believe integrity is proven in moments of crisis. But in reality, it is built in moments of privacy, when no one is tracking effort, when no one is measuring consistency, when shortcuts are available and invisible. Discipline is the structure that holds character in place. It is the ability to do what is necessary, not what is comfortable. To follow through, not because of pressure, but because of principle. A disciplined person does not rely on motivation. They rely on commitment. And commitment is a choice repeated daily. Responsibility is discipline extended outward. It is the willingness to own outcomes, even when they are inconvenient, even when explanation would be easier than admission, even when blame could be deflected. A person who accepts responsibility does not waste energy on defense. They invest energy in correction. This is why integrity feels heavy to those without it. It requires effort without immediate reward. It requires restraint without praise. It requires consistency without validation. And yet, it produces stability. People with integrity are predictable, not in behavior, but in principle. You know where they stand. You know what they will protect. You know what they will refuse to compromise. This predictability is rare. Many people are reactive. They adjust values based on circumstance. They perform character when observed and abandon it when unseen. Discipline eliminates this fragmentation. It creates alignment between internal standard and external behavior. This is why integrity often goes unnoticed. There is no spectacle in consistency, no dramatic confession, no emotional display, no grand narrative. Just repetition, waking up on time, doing the work thoroughly, telling the truth when it is inconvenient, keeping promises when breaking them would be easy. These acts do not trend, but they accumulate. Responsibility also reveals humility. A responsible person does not view accountability as humiliation. They view it as maintenance. They understand that admitting fault preserves trust, that correction strengthens competence, that ownership prevents decay. In contrast, Those who avoid responsibility must protect image constantly. They monitor perception. They curate narrative. They explain rather than correct. This is exhausting. Integrity simplifies life. When your behavior aligns with your values, there is nothing to manage. No double stories. No hidden exceptions. No selective honesty. Just clarity. Discipline also reveals respect for self and others. A disciplined person respects time. They do not waste it. They do not borrow it irresponsibly. They do not assume availability. They arrive prepared. They follow through. They close loops. These are not personality traits. They are ethical choices. And over time, they create trust. Trust is not built through charm or intensity. It is built through reliability. People trust those who do what they say, even when it costs them. Responsibility also means knowing your limits. A person with integrity does not overpromise. They do not inflate capacity to impress. They do not commit emotionally, financially, or professionally beyond what they can sustain. They choose sustainability over admiration. This restraint is often mistaken for lack of ambition, but it is the opposite. It is ambition disciplined by reality. The most telling sign of integrity is consistency under no supervision. When incentives are removed, when pressure disappears, when reward is uncertain, what remains? Those without discipline drift. Those with it continue, not because they are being watched, but because they are watching themselves. This internal witness is rare, and it is what separates reliability from performance. Integrity does not require recognition. It requires alignment. And alignment, once established, becomes unshakable because it is no longer dependent on circumstance. It is internal, silent, steady, uncompromising. Why weak character always collapses. Every structure eventually fails if it is built on a weak foundation. Every system implodes when its core is hollow. Every person with fragile character ultimately collapses, not because of fate, but because of design. Weak character is performative. It relies on appearances, charm, and manipulation. It is sustained by external validation, conditional compliance, and the illusion of control. But these supports are temporary. They cannot endure scrutiny, pressure, or time. Observe any person or institution built on fragility. They may thrive for a while. They may impress others. They may even dominate superficially. But the cracks are inevitable. Weak character is exposed in three ways. 1. Through pressure. 2. Through inconsistency. 3. Through loss. Pressure tests boundaries. It demands choices. It forces prioritization. A person who cannot maintain principle under pressure reveals fragility immediately. A manager who berates subordinates while flattering superiors. A partner who manipulates affection to maintain attention. A friend who only supports when convenient. In each case, stress is not the cause. It is the microscope. Weakness was always there. Pressure only exposes it. Inconsistency is another hallmark. Character is not episodic. It is cumulative. Someone of integrity behaves according to principle every day, even when unobserved, even when inconvenient, even when unnoticed. Weak character varies like a weather vane. It shifts to suit circumstance. It performs virtue when observed. It abandons principle when unchecked. This is why patterns matter more than words. A single moment can deceive. A lifetime of repeated choices cannot. Loss is the final test. Those who derive self-worth from position, approval, or perception cannot survive its absence. When influence wanes, recognition fades, or control slips, their world crumbles. The facade falls. The excuses emerge. The fear becomes visible. A weak person clings to the remnants of control. They lash out, manipulate, and blame. They seek to reclaim authority instead of rebuilding integrity. A strong person adapts. They survive. They endure. This is the difference between collapse and stability. Weak character collapses because it is transactional. It treats relationships, obligations, and trust as tools. It values utility over principle. It measures success by short-term gain rather than long-term consequence. And the universe responds. Because everything built on utility alone is vulnerable to erosion. Time, loss, and observation are relentless. They expose duplicity. They magnify gaps. They demand truth. The most dangerous people often appear strong precisely because their collapse is hidden. Charisma masks insecurity. Power masks incompetence. Aggression masks fragility. But eventually, masks slip. Eventually, structures fail. Eventually, truth emerges. This is why judgment is essential. Do not be swayed by temporary dominance. Do not trust charm without consistency. Do not mistake confidence for competence. Observe behavior under pressure. Observe repetition. Observe response to loss. Weakness manifests predictably. Self-interest dominates over principle. Image dominates over honesty. Ego dominates over collaboration. And the more fragile the foundation, the more spectacular the collapse. Strong character, by contrast, endures. It may face setbacks. It may be challenged. It may lose temporary control, but it remains intact because it is not performative. It is internal. It is anchored in principle, not circumstance. This is why the people you allow close to you matter. Because weak character, when given influence over others, amplifies destruction. It erodes trust. It sabotages progress. It creates chaos where order could have existed. Strong character, on the other hand, stabilizes. It uplifts. It empowers. It protects. Understand this. Fragility cannot masquerade forever. Performance cannot substitute for principle indefinitely. Short-term gain cannot outweigh long-term consequence. And in the end, collapse is not an accident. It is inevitable. Becoming the person others respect and trust. Character is not inherited. It is not performed. It is cultivated. Every choice you make, what you tolerate, what you defend, what you pursue, shapes who you are and who surrounds you. The people you allow close are mirrors. They reflect your standards, your boundaries, your discipline, and your values. If you seek respect and trust from others, begin with yourself. Because no one will consistently treat you with integrity if you do not demonstrate it in your own life. This is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is about alignment. Start by observing yourself in small, unremarkable moments. Do you follow through on promises, even when inconvenient? Do you treat everyone with respect, regardless of their status or utility to you? Do you speak with honesty, humility, and clarity, even when the truth is uncomfortable? Do you maintain composure when control slips or when adversity strikes? Do you protect what matters without resorting to manipulation or avoidance? Your answers reveal not only who you are, but who you will attract. People gravitate toward what they recognize. They respond to what they respect. They mirror what they tolerate. If you condone deceit, laziness, manipulation, or cruelty, silently or actively, you will attract it. If you demand integrity, discipline, and accountability, not as a performance, but as a standard, you will attract the same. Be mindful of patterns, not moments. One act of kindness is easy. One apology is easy. One heroic moment is easy. It is the repetition, the consistency, the quiet discipline in the unseen spaces of life that builds trust. True strength is silent. It does not boast. It does not demand recognition. It endures. And when others encounter it, they respond naturally with respect. Because integrity is magnetic. Consistency inspires confidence. Self-discipline fosters trust. This requires vigilance, constant self-reflection, willingness to confront weaknesses, willingness to improve, not to impress. And it requires patience. Character is a long game. Trust is built incrementally. Reputation is earned quietly over time. There will be setbacks. Mistakes will happen. People may test you. They may betray you. They may misunderstand your intentions. But the person who consistently chooses principle over convenience, integrity over comfort, discipline over impulse, that person becomes unshakable. They are a stabilizing presence in chaos, a source of guidance in uncertainty, a mirror of values for others to follow. And when you embody these traits, you will notice something remarkable. People naturally seek your counsel. People naturally align with your standards. People naturally respect the boundaries and integrity you maintain. Because you do not demand it. You do not perform it. You simply live it. You do not perform it. You simply live it. In the end, the most powerful influence you have is not in what you say, but in who you are when no one is watching. This is the essence of character. This is the secret to building relationships, teams, and communities that endure. This is how you become the person others respect and trust. Not by pretending, not by appearances, not by words, but by repeated, unwavering choice. And that choice begins with you.